Greetings, everybody, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. I hope you're ready to dive back into the world of Golarion, the setting for the Pathfinder role-playing game systems. If you are, we're going to be heading back in time to meet a bunch of individuals that shaped the way a section of Golarion went. Yes, we're going to be learning about some of the Runelords today, in particular the last Runelord of Greed, Karzoug. Those rulers of Thassilon, those dangerous individuals, many of which have tried to resurrect, many of which are finally dead, and yep, there's a lot to this one. So if you're ready to learn about them, take my hand. I'm going to open up our gate, which will not only take us through to Golarion, but through time itself, back to the ancient days of Thassilon, to learn about these interesting individuals. Take my hand, your host and guide here, Tantus Narrative, when you're, of course, and remember to hit me. Like, subscribe, ring the bell over the YouTube side of things, and let me know about this. Especially if you've done Rise of the Runelords. You can let me know what your experience with fighting Karzoug was, because he's the big boss of that one. Anyway, through time, through space, through the universe, to Golarion we go. Through the gate! Bang! We've arrived, once more, to Golarion. So, now, beyond just learning about this, there are many sources that I use to put together the information we're talking about. Unfortunately, there are big details about the Runelords of Greed we do not know. Yes, I am going to talk about all of them, not just Karzoug. And that's where our sources come in. The campaign settings does provide some basic information, but there are 3 adventure paths that have information spread throughout them. Rise of the Runelords, of course, hey, it deals directly with Karzoug. That's a big one. The Shattered Star, that's another one I can kind of point out as a important one to look at. It's got the Spires of Shalast there. And of course, Return of the Runelords, with things like The Rise of New Thassilon and all those books, provides a bunch of information. So between these 4, you can kind of get a picture of not only Karzoug, but all the Runelords of Greed, and this also will help you look into Thassilon itself, leading into New Thassilon. Anyway, let's talk about Karzoug. Now, we'll talk about the older Runelords of Greed. We don't have pictures of any of those. From the original Runelord who betrayed Zin and formed the Council of Runelords that ruled over Thassilon, to, of course, Karzoug. We don't know anybody there. We know Karzoug. So this is an Art of Karzoug. This is from actually the Game Master Guide for first edition, the original one. But yeah. Let's talk about Thassilon, talk about the Runelords, and let's learn about them. So we have to, of course, start out with of course, Zin, his betrayal, and the 7 Runelords. Well, there are, for Greed, a good number of Runelords. 7, which came before Karzoug. The original one, which was part of the betrayal, but lasted for only 32 years, was Golarion. Reigned from negative 6480 AR to 6448 AR. Discovered Karzoug, basically made deals with that, made a prison colony, choose the face of Mare Massif as a site for Zin Shalast. Also invented the original Church of Shalast, the Divine House of Consumption, and the center of his philosophy of esoteric veneration of greed. Had a lot of fragile agreements with various individuals, including those of Karzoug. So yeah, there's a lot of things they did. And again, the choosing the location for Zin Shalast, as it would, is important. But Zin Shalast would not be built yet. The next few Runelords of Greed, we don't know a lot about them. We know they replaced the other one, probably through murder. The second one, Pathinder, ruled for 130 years. After that, from negative 6448 to negative 6318. Replaced by Gimel. He reigned for 126 years, from negative 6318 to negative 6192. Again, we know they were male and theoretically human. We know that Pathinder was female And we know, again, presumed to be human, and Calderne was male human. Again, humans were very superior in the top society, especially when it comes to arcane studies and stuff. Within Thassilonians, you're going to assume that most likely they had a top slot there. Anyway, Gimel led to Lignia, who ruled for 152 years. The fourth Runelord of Greed, from negative 6192 to 6040, human female. Then we led to, I'm going to butcher this one, Masmirana. It actually wasn't too bad. Masmirana, she ruled, again, female human, for 43 years. Not that long. As the fifth Runelord of Greed. The sixth Runelord of Greed, hey, we're getting through them, 135 years. And that's, Athusa. Probably butchering that one. There is a modern day being in New Thassilon who basically named themselves after the sixth Runelord of Greed and such. But yeah, that's an entirely other thing. Who also have the same name as the third Runelord of Gluttony, but we'll get to them when we get to Gluttony. Anyway, from them came the final one before Karzoug, the basically penultimate Runelord of Greed, ruler of Shalast before Earthfall, ruling for 103 years, from 5863 to 5759. This male transmuter had his apprentice Karzoug. And his apprentice Karzoug was the one that succeeded him and basically attempted to erase all mentions and memory of Hafna. And his renowned spellbook, The Rune of Wealth, from Thassilonian historical records. So not only did he supplant his master, he tried to erase him from existence. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't get a lot of information on these additional Runelords. They kind of wanted to hide the fact that the others existed in a lot of ways. Karzoug, the name was Shalast. School of Transmutation was the School of Greed. With the burning glaive of Weapon of Rule, the studded with meteoric gemstones, and the Sword of Conviction, Chelin, a petrifying golden scimitar. Karzoug ruled for 466 years. So, Karzoug's master didn't rule as long, but was seen as one of the best Runelords of Greed. One of the reasons that Karzoug tried to erase them. Here's a nice headshot of Karzoug. The Claimer, Tyrant of Shalast, Suzerain of Greater Shalast, Protector of Thassilon, Champion of the Rune of Law, Runelord of Greed himself, a male, human, 20th level transmuter. He was technically 10,543 when he died, in 4707. Born in negative 5336. What do we know about Karzoug? Other than he was the final Runelord of Greed, he ruled Shalast, the realm of greed, until it fell. His early time, we can talk about very easily. We know he was when he was born. We knew it was during the previous Runelord's reign. And it was in the city of Malstoke. He was a slave to the Lich Zinla. This details of early life beyond this are unknown, basically removed from historical records at his command. But we know at the age of 27, he tricked Zinlun to sell him to a cannibal in a fit of pique. And then he basically killed that cannibal and used his gold teeth to become apprenticed to a demon binder, Thurble. He served Thurble for 7 years as basically a slave and a lore for summoned demons, who actually killed him alive. But after his death, Thurble resurrected him. During this time, he learned magical powers, rulership, and exercise of power from the demons. Basically, yes, he was getting killed and resurrected. He was going through a lot of crap for 7 years after he'd basically been slave for a lot, sold to a cannibal, killed the cannibal, used that money to basically become an apprentice slash servant slash slave slash demon lore for a demon binder. Turns out when you're an apprentice to a demon binder, you do get sacrificed to demons. Yeah. But you keep your soul. just get eaten or murdered. Anyway, everything changed when the current Runelord of Greed, Pathinder, called for an apprentice, a new one, in negative 5802. So Karzoug, at the age of 34, sabotaged one of Verbal's conjurations. He let the summoned demon devour his master's soul and then looted his belongings. And with this new wealth, he impressed Pathinder enough to be chosen as an apprentice and learn transmutation from the Runelord himself. Karzoug found himself fascinated with the thinning of reality in Neon Massive. Remember, I mentioned Neon Massive, as that was a site of the possible building of Shalast. Yes. The first Runelord had chosen. But it wasn't built. Now Karzoug, with this thinning, secured an alliance with the almost humans of Lang. I'll have to talk about them, but these are the denizens of Lang, beings from beyond, who taught him eldritch reality warping powers in exchange for access to the universe of Golarion. And finally then, after about 43 years of apprenticeship, in negative 5759, Pathinder discovered Karzoug's plots, but was killed along with his other apprentice, Vaj, by a spell that the almost humans, the denizens of Lang, had taught Karzoug. And so, Karzoug came to be the only, the one, Runelord of Greed, taking command. His master dead, his time discovered. So, during the years after succeeding the previous Runelord, Karzoug razed his hometown of Maelstrom to erase details of his embarrassing life in early time as a slave. He also destroyed his first master, Zintrun's lair, but he actually failed to destroy the Lich. Same year, on the site where Maelstrom once stood, he quarried miles of stone to build monuments, crafting the Storval Deep, a large lake in that region, officially created by the Thassilonians. During his reign, Shalast grew in power, and Shalast became one of the most breathtaking cities in Golarion, and through this grandeur only befitting Karzoug himself and the nobles. So basically, he made sure Shalast existed as it was. It was, as far as we know, I'll talk about it, but built, in truth, what we know of it is today, during Karzoug's rule. So, again, it's not to say that there might not have been something there, but Shalast, as it was known at the end of Thassilon, was built by Karzoug. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that there couldn't have been something in that location, just Karzoug made Shalast what it was. The grandeur befitting him and his nobles. He ruled with corruption, ruthlessness. He once ordered an entire city to be burned because the local tax collectors were short a few servants. He and Aslantis, the ruler of Barkaron, one of the other Runelords, were in a perpetual state of warfare, constantly battling at the border between the two realms. In negative 5620, he built the Cipher Gate and murdered its engineer, Dravanzi, to ensure no one knew it worked but him. The secret of the portal to the dimension of time. He devised an occult ritual to do so, to travel to the past in the process, but didn't finish it before Earthfall. So he was trying to build like a time machine, basically. In negative 5353, he established Giltspur, which served as an embassy between Shalast and Lang. And in negative 5319, he tried to triumph over his rival Zutha in stealing the Shard of Gluttony, which he was then tasked a Dark Rider with guarding. At the end of his reign, he was the strongest Runelord of Greed who have ever ruled Shalast. Not the penultimate one, but the strongest. The penultimate one being his master, who just was a better ruler. Still, he eliminated his ruler. He was still the strongest. Now, to survive Earthfall and its destruction, he used a runewell to create a demi-plane sanctuary known as the Eye of Atlas. There was some connections with another of the Runelords, which actually may have protected them. After she created her own runewell, the Runelord of Envy, Belamaris, paid Karzoug an obscene amount of money and treasure to ask for his help. Karzoug took the payment and didn't have intention to aid her rival, so gave bad advice. And Belmaris didn't have time to investigate this aid and discover the trap. Belmaris is one of the 2 surviving Runelords. Perhaps Karzoug's greed and disdain saved her in this case. Her not having things enacted correctly may have kept her alive. So Belmaris is still alive. We'll talk about her when we talk about envy in the future. But, yeah. Karzoug. Now, he is dead now. But what? He had his demi-plane. He could hide from Earth. In 4702. Hey, now I'm not talking negative. I'm talking actually 4702. I'm talking about 23 years ago. The Stone Giant Wizard, Morkamu, triggered the rune well, awoke in Karzoug accident. Karzoug couldn't step out of the rune well at this point in time, so he's forced of will to turn Morkamu into his agent and spent the next 5 years gathering minions from the denizens of the ruins of Shalast. And in 4707, he gathered the power to allow himself to manifest flesh and blood outside the eyes of avarice, but a group of heroes invaded and killed Karzoug before he could promptly return to the universe. Basically, that's Rise of the Runelords. A bunch of heroes eventually confront him, kill him, call it a day. His soul went to the boneyard. Phrasma temporarily delayed his judgment because she knew that he was destined to be used by another group of heroes. His souls eventually fell into the hands of High Justice, used as a measure of weight of sin of other souls that fell into his hands. So, yeah. And just to note, that's where his soul is now. And, of course, High Justice is the new Thassilon Rise book. High Justice isn't Damon in the battle. So, yeah. But, let's talk about Shalast. And, of course, Shalast. To finish up today. Now that we've kind of got an idea of the ruler, we should talk about the nation. Shalast is technically part of Thassilon, but being the 7 regions, each of them kind of warred with each other. Shalast tended to be kind of in the center region of it, taking up a large chunk of Varisia, and we don't know a whole lot about it, but we do know about Shalast, the fabled city, once capital of Shalast. It's located far from the heart of civilization, the Khotr Mountains. It was kind of mythical, rediscovered more recently. It's located in the Mahar Massif at an altitude of more than 15,000 feet. It was made here because, by Karzoug eventually, to build to the capital to his level, because of that connection between Lang and the universe. Lang's influence cloaks it in a magic that prevents most from reaching it. An idle explorer could walk one side of Mahar Massif and down the other without ever seeing the city. And those that tried to could go their entire lives without finding the city. Anyone can find the river Ava and track down Shalast to its headwaters, but even that is difficult. So, again, built up during the reign of Runelord Karzoug by his thousands of cities, under the lash of the Lambros, the Lamias, and the great giant enforcers that worked for him. When Earthfall came, he abandoned the city. It was wrecked by avalanche, volcanic eruptions, and for 10 millennia he slept within the Eye of Asmars as his minions tried to uphold their culture and prepare for his return. So, yes. His minions and disciples were trying to return to the city. When Karzoug died, his loyal servants vowed retribution. Violence erupted across the city, dozens of petty warlords sought to become the next ruler, further dividing the city into a civil war. In 4708, the news of its wealth spread across Varisia, and local governments sent explorers, soldier colonists to get what they could. And it wasn't until 4719 that Shalast became the capital of the Thassilon. As Sorshan, the other Runelords survived the awakening of all of the Runelords. After she awakened from her slumber, basically, again, I've talked about New Thassilon, where there's the 2 Runelords ahead of it, and Sorshan is honestly on a path of, retribution, or, not retribution, reconciliation. Basically, she's like, being an evil bitch doesn't really pay the bills. It almost got me killed, and it got all my other fellow Runelords killed, and Bellamars is like, wahaha, I can still be evil, and she's like, come on, Bellamars. But anyway, so Shorshin basically chose this place, kept its names in Shalast, out of nostalgia and remind, basically, of Karzoug's eras. So, yeah. At its height, it had a variety of population. We can know from not the modern versions in the ancient city, it was a metropolis of nearly 300,000 people, of which over 200,000 were humans, with maybe like about 35,000 giants, 26,000 Lambrios, 11,000 others, all under Karzoug. And Karzoug wasn't without his apprentices. Some of the leaders up here was Callum, one of his apprentices. Others were Pabra Urig, Turningate, Alvangar, Bernus Vale, Augenbeek. There were others that worked under Karzoug for the city. Anyway, so the Lambrios and Giants were the favored servants and soldiers of Karzoug. The Giants were controlled by a Rune Giant tribe who dominated them. The humanoids were below them, made up the majority of the population, and there were a bunch of slaves here. Basically, few survived past Middle Ages. Dragons affiliated with Karzoug also lived near here, answering to no one but the Runelord himself. The Shalast architecture is Cyclopsian, as it was designed to house giants and hundreds of thousands of people in mind. So yes, it's made for larger people. A lot of it's been abandoned since Earthfall, and had presence of various giants in the recent years, and of course the power struggle until it's been currently retaken, rebuilt, resettled. The newest version. There you go. There's the Runelords of Greed, Shalast, their nation, and of course the final one, a penultimate villain in one of the first adventure paths, Karzoug, Runelord of Greed, the final one. It's interesting to see that he, as a penultimate villain, had a big role. I mean, he was on the Game Mastery Guide cover, the original Game Mastery Guide for first edition. It's not something to say about it. To say that, yes, Karzoug gets defeated in Rise of the Runelords, but him as a figure, as this first major villain, as this being from beyond time, from an ancient history, is very impressive. The Thassilonians, the Runelords, were big deal. Thassilon, I talked about it, and its corruption under the unfortunate loss of things, with the loss of Zin and the rise of the Runelords. The Runelords divided up the nation, corrupted the nation, changed to something closer to Aslan. Maybe even worse than a lot of the worst parts of Aslan. But nonetheless, you can see how Karzoug and Greed were just in the thick of things there. And each of the Runelords will be like that. I do want to talk about all the different Runelords in their own right, just to give an impression of all of them, and give you an idea about these people and beings. Karzoug, with his massive transmutation, which also might not really exist anymore because, things that happened in Remaster Project. But, basically, magic changed. The 8 schools of magic might not be around anymore, but, there are probably still legacy kind of things underneath them. So, we'd have to figure out where he fits in and all that, but still, each of the Runelords representing one of the sins is there. So, that will be it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, check out all my other stuff, whether it's live over on Twitch or over on the YouTube side. All my tabletop stuff goes up on there. If you're checking me out live, that's me doing tabletop recordings, video games content for some variety, gaming with some friends, playing some live plays of games like Pathfinder and D&D and such, and discussing tabletop Saturday at 6. All tabletop stuff goes over on YouTube. Schedules for both of these things are up on my social media. That's Discord, Blue Sky, X/Twitter, and of course, I do put some stuff over on my YouTube community site. Not as much as the rest of them. I kind of went in order of importance operations, but also you can find other than updates there, what's going on in my life, cat pics, all that kind of stuff. Just keeps you apprised of the situation. Please remember to do the things that Help appease the algorithm. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. Let me know what you think about Karzoug. Have you done the Rise of Runelords Adventure Path? I almost played through most of it. We got through to Adventure 5 before our game unfortunately fell apart. But we did pretty far in Rise of Runelords, and it was a pretty fun one to do. I would have liked if we'd have finished it. We just never got it. Unfortunately. Things happen. But, it was a good experience in doing it. We just never got to play Karzoug. But have you done that? Or have you experienced any of the other adventure paths that do with Runelords? We'll be talking about them in the future. But anyway, until the next time, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.